MadBhagavad Gita, Chapter-13, Chapter-13, Vibhaga Yoga, the individual and the ultimate consciousness. Verse 1 and 2. Arjuna said, O Krishna, I wish to understand this material energy, the individual consciousness, the field of activity, the knower of the field of activity, knowledge and the goal of knowledge. Lord Krishna said, O Arjuna, the material body is known as the field of activity. Those who know this describe those who know this as knowers of the field of activity. Verse 3. O Arjuna, certainly knowing me as well within all bodies as the knower of the field of activity, such knowledge of the field of activity and the knower of the field of activity is actual knowledge in my opinion. Verse 4. Hear in brief from me about that field of activities. Also, what kind of nature it possesses, what transformation it produces, from whence it was born, and what is its influence. In a unique manner, it has been sung in many ways by various sages, by the Vedic hymns, by various aphorisms of Vedanta, with its sound logic and reasoning, and by conclusive verses 6 and 7. The major elements of earth, water, air, fire, and ether, the false ego, spiritual intelligence, the unmanifest element in material nature, the 10 senses along with the mind, and the 5 objects of the senses as sound, sight, taste, touch, and smell, desire, disdain, happiness, distress, the perceptual facility of the mind, determination, all this is declared to be the field of activities, modified by the 6 transformations of the physical body, beginning with birth and ending with death. Verses 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, honesty, rendering service to a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadfastness, self-control, renouncing the desires of the senses, free from false egoism, and aware of the distressful inauspiciousness of birth, old age, disease, and death, being without attachment to son, wife, and home, equipoised in all situations, consistent, devoid of elation or disappointment, regarding favorable or unfavorable circumstances, preference for solitary places, aversion of mundane society, and exclusively performing devotional service unto me by the unalloyed science of uniting the individual consciousness with the ultimate consciousness, always aspiring for self-realization, constantly meditating on the ultimate truth as the goal of true wisdom. All this is thus proclaimed as knowledge, and whatever is contrary to this is nescience. Verse 13. Now I shall explain that which is to be known, realizing which the nectar of immortality is attained. That reality is eternal, having me as the supreme, beyond cause, beyond effect, and designated as Brahman. Verse 14. The ultimate truth. With hands and feet everywhere, with eyes, heads, and faces everywhere, hearing all, that reality exists, pervading everything in this 15. World. The ultimate truth is cognizant of all the senses of the material nature, yet is devoid of all material senses. Completely unattached, yet the sustainer of everything. Transcendental to the material nature, yet the maintainer of the material nature. Verse 16. Within and without all living entities, that ultimate truth is stationary as well as mobile, on account of its being subatomic. That ultimate truth is incomprehensible and is far away, yet also Verse 17. Near. Without division, that ultimate truth appears to be divided among all the various living entities, and is to be known as the preserver of all living entities, and the destroyer as well as the creator. That ultimate truth is declared as the illuminator of all that illuminates, beyond the darkness of ignorance. Residing within the heart of everyone, it is comprehensible by the wisdom gained from realization, by the knowledge of direct Verse 19. My devotee, understanding this field of activity, knowledge, and what is to be known, thus described in summary, becomes qualified for my divine nature. Verse 20. Know that verily, both the material energy and the individual consciousness certainly are beginningless, and know that transformations of the body and the three modes of material nature also certainly are produced by the material energy. Verse 21. In the matter of creation, the material energy is responsible for cause and effect. In the matter of experiencing happiness and distress, the individual consciousness is declared responsible. 22. The individual consciousness situated in the material energy certainly experiences the three modes of material nature produced by the material energy. The beguiling infatuation of these three modes of material nature is the cause of a being's innumerable births, superior and inferior in the wombs of variegated life. Verse 23. Within the body, supreme to the individual consciousness, an indwelling observer, a sanctioner, a preserver, an enjoyer, and indeed ultimate controller as well, is described as the Verse 24. Anyone who understands in this way the individual consciousness and the ultimate consciousness, also the material energy, along with the three modes of material nature, one, although existing in any condition, never takes birth again. Verse 25. Some, by the science of the individual consciousness attaining communion with the ultimate consciousness, perceive within the self the ultimate consciousness by meditation on the self. Others by the discrimination between matter and spirit, and others by the science of uniting the individual consciousness with the ultimate consciousness by actions. Verse 26. Yet others, without knowing these methods, engage in worship by hearing from others. Verily, they become established from listening, also transcending the transmigration of death. Verse 27. O Arjuna, whatever living entity, animate or inanimate, comes into being, know they are produced by the interaction between the field of activities and the knower of the field of activity. Verse 28. Anyone who perceives the ultimate consciousness residing equally in all living entities, everywhere, as the imperishable within the perishable, such a one actually perceives. Verse 29. By seeing the ultimate consciousness equally everywhere, impartially situated, one does not degrade the embodied self by the self, therefore reaching the supreme goal. Verse 30. Anyone who perceives in this way that activities in all respects are being performed only by the material energy, such a one perceives perfectly the embodied self as the non-doer. Verse 31. When one actually perceives the expansion and diversity of all life forms, as situated in the unity of material nature, thereafter, at that time, the ultimate truth is Verse 32. The ultimate consciousness is beginningless, immutable, devoid of any material quality, O Arjuna. Although situated within the body, it never does anything, nor is it Verse 33. Influenced. As all-pervading space is never implicated due to being subtle, similarly, the ultimate consciousness, being all-pervading, situated in the body, is never implicated. Verse 34. O Arjuna, just as one sun illuminates an entire universe, similarly, the ultimate consciousness and the individual consciousness illuminates the entire field of activity of the physical body. Verse 35. Those who by the realization of knowledge can fathom the distinction between the body, the individual consciousness, and the ultimate consciousness, and the liberation of the living entities from the material energy, they achieve the supreme. Thus ends the Sri Bhagavad Gita Trust translation of MadBhagavad Gita, Chapter 13, entitled Ksetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, the individual and ultimate consciousness.